I never intended to keep my success a secret, life just unfolded that way. Growing up in Singapore, my parents instilled in me the value of hard work and education. Emily, knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you, my father would say, driving his taxi late into the night to fund my studies. My mother worked 2 jobs, ensuring I had everything I needed to excel. Their sacrifices paid off. I graduated top of my class in finance and secured a position at one of Asia's largest banks. By 28, I was the youngest division head in the bank's history, managing over $50 billion in corporate loans, but few knew this side of me. I met James at my friend's small café, where I often helped out on weekends. Something about the simple, grounding work kept me balanced. One rainy morning, he walked in, ordered a latte, and smiled when I drew a heart in the foam. "This is the best coffee I've had in months," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The secret is making it with care," I replied, wiping down the counter. He returned every weekend. We talked about everything: his work as an architect, his dreams of designing sustainable buildings, his close-knit family. I liked that he saw me, not just what I had achieved. When he finally asked me out, I said yes without hesitation. Our first date was at a humble hawker center, sharing plates of char kway teow and laughing about nothing in particular. I fell in love with his kindness, his integrity, the way he treated everyone with respect, regardless of their status. But then came his family. "They're a bit traditional," James warned before I met them. "They can be judgmental about career and status." "Don't worry," I assured him, "I can handle it." I wasn't prepared for Richard Chin, his father, a self-made real estate tycoon. He commanded every room he entered. His wife, Helen, was equally formidable, her designer clothes and impeccable poise exuding quiet authority. His sister, Victoria, had inherited her mother's icy demeanor. When I mentioned working at a café, she barely concealed her disdain. "A café?" Richard's voice boomed across the dinner table. "James, I thought you said she went to university?" "She did, Dad. Emily has a degree in—" Clearly not putting it to good use, Richard interrupted. "In this family, we believe in ambition, excellence, not serving coffee." James flushed, his jaw tightening, but said nothing. Helen smoothed her pearl necklace, a telltale sign she was about to deliver a carefully crafted insult. "Dear, perhaps we could help Emily find a more suitable position. Our cleaning company is always hiring." Victoria smirked. "At least she'd have health insurance." I stayed composed. Years of high-stakes negotiations had trained me well. "I enjoy my current work, but thank you for your concern." Dinner blurred into a series of patronizing remarks and veiled jabs. James apologized profusely on the way home. "They'll come around," he promised. "They just need time." But they didn't. Over the next year, as James and I grew closer, his family's disdain only deepened. Every gathering became a test of endurance. Richard never missed an opportunity to remind me of my humble background. Helen orchestrated seating arrangements to keep me away from important guests. Victoria openly suggested James find someone more appropriate. When he proposed, their reaction was predictable. "A cafe worker?" Richard exploded. "Have you lost your mind?" "Dad, I love her," James said firmly. "Love won't maintain our family's standing," Richard shot back. "If you marry her, don't expect any support from me." But James chose me. We had a small, beautiful wedding. His family didn't attend. Months passed. I continued my cafe shifts on weekends, finding peace in the simplicity of the work while managing billion-dollar deals during the week. James respected my decision to keep my career private, understanding my need to be loved for who I was, not what I owned. Then came the annual Chin family reunion. "We should go," James insisted. "They're still family." I hesitated but agreed, hoping time had softened their hearts. I was wrong. Held at Richard's sprawling estate, the reunion was an exhibition of wealth and power. The moment we arrived, I felt the weight of judgmental stares. "Oh, The cafe girl still hasn't found a real job? Victoria's voice rang through the garden. How persistent. Richard gathered everyone for his annual toast, champagne flowing as he boasted about the family's achievements. Then he spotted us. "Ah, James, tell everyone about your new project." His gaze flicked over me. "And your wife can serve drinks, that's what she's good at, yes?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. James tensed, but before he could respond, a commotion erupted near the house. Richard's secretary rushed over, pale-faced. "Mr. Chin, urgent call from the bank." "Not now," Richard waved her off, "we're celebrating." "Sir. It's about the emergency loans, they've been denied." Richard stiffened. "Impossible, I spoke with the division head yesterday." "No, sir, the new CEO is reviewing all major loans personally. They're requesting a meeting tomorrow." My phone vibrated. My secretary. I already knew what this was about. Chin Developments had been flagged for financial discrepancies. As CEO of the corporate banking division, I had ordered a full audit. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I stepped away to take the call, my voice calm. "Send me the files. I'll review them tonight," I said before slipping my phone back into my pocket. When I returned, the party had shifted. The usual air of smug confidence was gone. Richard Chin was in full crisis mode. His face, once a mask of superiority, was now lined with barely concealed panic as he barked orders into his phone. Helen hovered nearby, her perfectly manicured hands wringing together. Victoria sauntered over, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Looks like Daddy's company is having a bit of trouble. Not that you'd understand business matters." "More champagne?" I met her gaze, my smile polite but sharp. "No, thank you, but I do have a question. How's your position at your father's company?" She perked up, eager to boast. "I'm Executive Vice President of Operations." "Interesting, and what exactly do you do?" Her smile faltered. "I oversee things, important things. Like the shell companies in the Cayman Islands?" The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. A hush fell over the nearby guests as heads turned our way. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know what you're talking about. The ones hiding your father's debt, or perhaps the inflated property valuations?" Before she could respond, Richard's voice boomed across the garden. "Everyone, party's over, family emergency." As guests murmured and began to leave, Richard turned to James, his desperation barely masked. "Son, I need your help. The bank, they're being unreasonable. Your firm has good relationships with other banks, yes?" James hesitated. "Dad, we're a small architecture firm. We don't handle corporate loans." Richard's patience snapped. "Useless, just like your choice in a wife. If I lose this company, it's on your head for bringing bad luck into this family." That was enough. I stepped forward, my phone in hand. "Mr. Chin, I believe we have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. He barely spared me a glance. "This doesn't concern you, coffee girl." I unlocked my phone and turned the screen toward him, revealing my executive profile. "Actually, it does." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's eyes flicked to the screen, confusion, disbelief, horror. Helen's pearl necklace slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Victoria looked ready to faint. "That's impossible," Richard choked out. I kept my voice even. "Emily Chen, CEO of the Corporate Banking Division, Singapore United Bank, your loan applications crossed my desk last week. The irregularities were concerning." James turned to me, stunned. "Emily. All this time?" I softened. "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I own. You gave me that gift, your family. Not so much." Richard suddenly straightened, his business instincts kicking in. "Well, this is wonderful news. We're all family here. Surely we can work something out." "Family?" I echoed. "Like when you called me a gold digger at our wedding, or when you told your business associates that James married beneath his station?" Helen stepped forward, arms outstretched. "Darling, we were just protecting our son. Surely you understand?" I tilted my head. "Oh, I understand perfectly. You judged me, Humiliated me, treated me like dirt because you thought I was beneath you, and now, suddenly, you want my help? Victoria tried a different tactic, her tone saccharine. Emily, sweetie, we were just teasing, it was all in good fun. I turned to James. Did you know about your sister's role in the company? He shook his head. She said she was handling operations. She was, I said coolly, by helping your father hide debt and inflate assets. The audit shows years of financial manipulation. Richard's face darkened. Now see here, you can't just. I can, and I will, I cut in smoothly. Tomorrow's meeting isn't about loans, it's about a fraud investigation. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't dare, we're family. I let out a soft laugh. Let me share something. My father, the taxi driver you mocked at my wedding, taught me, true family supports you, believes in you, loves you. Regardless of your status. I turned to James. Shall we go? He didn't hesitate. Let's. And with that, we left them standing in the wreckage of their own making. I took James's hand. The authorities will be contacting you tomorrow. I suggest you get your lawyers ready. As we turned to leave, Helen's voice cut through the tension. Wait, what about Victoria? She was just following orders. I paused at the door. Actions have consequences, Helen. Victoria chose to participate in fraud. She'll face the same investigation as everyone else. The drive home was quiet, the weight of everything settling between us. Finally, James broke the silence. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have treated me differently if you knew? He thought for a moment. No, I fell in love with you, not your job. That's why I fell in love with you too. I squeezed his hand. I'm sorry for keeping this from you, I just needed to know our love was real. What happens now? I sighed. Your father's company will be investigated. With the evidence we have, there will likely be criminal charges. Victoria too, if she's implicated. And us? That depends. Can you handle being married to a woman who makes more than your entire family combined? James laughed, the tension breaking. I think I'll manage, but no more secrets. No more secrets, I promised. The next morning, Richard Chin arrived at my office promptly at 9 a.m., flanked by his lawyers. Gone was the arrogant tycoon, replaced by a man who finally understood that he wasn't the most powerful person in the room. I slid the audit report across the desk. Falsified valuations, hidden debts, shell companies, it's all here. His lawyer cleared his throat. We can explain. No need, I interrupted. The evidence has already been forwarded to the authorities. Richard leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. Emily, please, think about what this will do to the family name. Like you thought about my reputation when you told everyone I was a gold digger? Before he could respond, my secretary entered, her voice a quiet disruption. Ma'am, the police are here. What followed was a media circus. Headlines screamed, Chen Development CEO arrested for fraud. Victoria was taken into custody next, clutching her designer handbag as officers led her away. Helen had a very public breakdown at the country club. Through it all, James stood by me. I could see the pain in his eyes, watching his family crumble, but he never wavered. They did this to themselves, he said one evening as we watched the news. You just exposed the truth. Weeks turned into months, and the investigation revealed more than even I had suspected. Richard had masterminded a complex scheme, inflated property valuations to secure loans, then channeled the funds through shell companies. Victoria had played her part, using her position as a front for fraud. The trial was swift. Richard was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Victoria, 5. Helen, spared criminal charges, lost everything in the asset forfeitures. One autumn day, Helen appeared at my office. Her once immaculate designer clothes had been replaced with simple cotton. She looked out of place in the small lobby, her shoulders heavy with a burden I hadn't seen in her before. I know I have no right to be here, she began, her voice strained, but I need to say something. I gestured for her to continue. I was wrong about you, so terribly wrong. Her eyes welled with tears. We judged you because we thought wealth and status were everything. Now I'm alone, living in a small apartment, working as a sales clerk, and I finally understand. Understand what? That character matters more than cash. You were kind to us even when we were cruel. You could have destroyed us completely, but you let the law take its course. That's real class. I studied her, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. Her eyes held the vulnerability that had been absent in our past encounters. What do you want, Helen? A chance, not to be close. I know I don't deserve that, but to apologize, to try to be better. 6 months later, we hosted a small dinner party. Helen came, bringing homemade dumplings, a skill she had learned in her new life. She was different now, humbler, more genuine. James was healing too, visiting his father and sister in prison, working through years of family dysfunction. As for me, I continued my weekend shifts at the café, not because I needed to hide anymore, but because I loved the simplicity of making someone's day better with a perfect cup of coffee. One morning, a young woman came in, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Rough day?" I asked, drawing a heart in her latte foam. "My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough," she sighed. "Wrong background, wrong job." I smiled, remembering where my own journey began. "Let me tell you a story about family, pride, and what really matters in the end. Life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons. Sometimes it takes losing everything to understand what truly matters." Richard and Victoria learned this in prison. Helen learned it through humility, and I learned that being true to yourself is worth more than all the wealth in the world. James and I are expecting our first child now. We decided to name her Grace, a reminder that even in the hardest situations, a measure of mercy is sometimes deserved. Helen is excited to be a grandmother, and even Richard, through his prison letters, seems to be reflecting on what kind of legacy he really wants to leave. The cafe still stands, a humble reminder of where our story began. Sometimes customers recognize me, the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends. They often ask why I still do it. My answer is simple. Every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day better, and at the end of our lives, isn't that what matters most? They usually smile, understanding or not, but I know my truth. Success isn't about power, revenge, or even proving others wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, showing kindness even when it's not deserved, and remembering that everyone, even those who hurt us, deserves a chance at redemption. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of hope. James will join me soon, as he does every weekend. Helen might stop by with her dumplings. Life isn't perfect, but it's real, and rich with lessons learned. And sometimes, when I'm making coffee or reviewing billion-dollar deals, I think about my father's words. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. He was right, but he missed something important. Integrity, compassion, and the courage to be yourself. Those are things nobody can take either.